we're on to the next chapter now, chapter 11 of It's Not a Boy. And it's called Saturdays, because on Saturdays we played, and we played in the woods, as you know, but we also played on the railway line, where wild flowers abounded and wild grasses were our secret place, but also the actual line where you would never ever let children go today. There was no more painting for me after that Glades competition at Gum Manor. In fact, we never did painting again in Mrs. Bantam's class. You see, Mrs. Bantam made us work hard at spellings and sums, and there wasn't time for anything else now. There was never a minute to spare with all the hard work, so I was always very glad when it was Friday night and I didn't have to go back to school on Saturday. I could have fun. Saturdays were really good at our house. For one thing, I didn't have to get up early to catch our school bus, and for another, you could do what you wanted. The first thing I did when I finally got up was to listen to the wireless. There was a programme of children's songs on, and I loved them. I used to get at our table and listen, and sometimes I turned the volume up to hear the tunes even better and listen to their dancing notes. But when my dad came in for his mug of tea, he had to have some peace. "Stop that noise," he said. So the wireless had to be switched off, and it didn't go back on because Dad and me went to Ringham after his mug of tea. Dad drove as if there wasn't a minute to lose. Well, I suppose there wasn't really. He wanted to get back to our farm animals and to our livelihood. But back to Ringham, at last we pulled up with a jerk in the marketplace and hurriedly jumped out to get a list of things from the chemist because Auntie Vera had got a little baby girl. It wasn't like when I was born, because you see, she already had 2 boys, and so when her little girl arrived, it was wonderful for her and Uncle Sid. Anyway, the next thing we had to do with the shopping was go to the grocer's and get bread and papers for everybody. And then we got comics and some bags of sweets. That was another good thing about Saturdays. It was the one day of the week when we got sweets and comics. And after that, we jogged back home in our van. And then I had the rest of the day to please myself. Sometimes on Saturdays I played with Brenda, and we had great fun. And sometimes I went to her house, and sometimes she came to mine. We were still friends, even though she was in the next class up. But if I wasn't playing with Brenda, I was playing with Gwendy and Terry and Stewie. Terry had just invented a new game for Saturdays when we had nothing else to do. You needed plenty of time because there was a lot of waiting. It was on our railway line. Down our lane, just past Hospaster there was a level crossing, and that's where we played. We knew you weren't supposed to be there on the railway because the trains were heavy and they couldn't stop in time if they saw you. But Terry knew what to do. He said that you could listen out for trains by lying down and putting your head on the rail. He said that if your ear was on the metal, then you could hear the train coming even if it was a mile away, and there would be plenty of time for us to get up and run away. So after listening with our heads down, and we were sure that all was clear, we got on with our game. First, Terry wanted to put a penny on the track, and so we had to look for a good place. And then we went to sit on the top of one of the big white railway gates at the level crossing, and we waited for the next train. The idea was that the engine could squash Terry's penny flat. Suddenly there it was, the big train coming, and there was all black smoke surrounding it. A big engine with the driver peering out. Of course, he couldn't see Terry's penny, and he always smiled at us and waved, and we always waved back. We waved and waved with our arms outstretched as the train and carriages or trucks chugged on their way to Ringham Station, where they left coal for farmers to pick up. In the summer, there were passenger carriages full of kids and families going to spend the day at Ripsey seaside. But we couldn't wait all day to see what had happened to Terry's penny. We were excited, so we waved more and more, hoping that we could make the train go faster and disappear more quickly. But instead, I was sure that it slowed down, with the carriages creeping round the next bend, making us wait even longer. Then at last we saw the back of the final carriage fading from our view, and there was nothing more to do except wait for the smoke to go. Then we jumped off the gate and dashed onto the railway line to find Terry's penny and see if it was squashed. It was completely spattered, with the king's head spread out all over. I tried it with my farthing from my charm bracelet, but it was no good. I just found it pushed off the line and in the cinders. I thought about us kids with our heads on the line, listening for a train. And if Terry was wrong about hearing the train a mile away, our heads could be squashed, just like that king's head on his penny, or pushed into the cinders, just like my farthing. It was a dangerous game, and we loved it because of the fear, which was a fun sort of fear. My mam kept warning us that it was no place for children to play, but we took no notice. It was too much fun. It was like the woods where we played, even though we should not be trespassing. And just like the woods, we made sure that nobody ever saw us on the railway line. Of course, there were lots of signs, just like Mr. Lordley's: trespassers will be prosecuted, in clear red writing on a board. But these were metal signs with hundreds of bubbly black letters. They were so badly worn in places that you could hardly read what it said. But it said things like danger and keep away. And also it was signed by order, but you couldn't see who'd signed it. It was so old. We just made more fun out of it after seeing the sign. We always sat on the big white gate, watching and waiting for the train to come and splatter Terry's pennies every Saturday. There were 2 gates at our level crossing, one on each side, and Uncle Sid said that they had to be closed at all times, so that nothing and nobody could get onto the rail and be in danger of accidentally being squashed by the train. So the gates were always closed. But it didn't matter to us, of course, because we just climbed over them.